The federal government has extended the first phase of the gradual easing of lockdown by 2 weeks. There are implications to that, and tonight we dissect all the angles of the issues for you. And President Muhammadu Buhari today met with state governors, and he has warned that we need to be careful in the fight against COVID-19, highlighting the need to continue to educate and persuade the people to accept the reality of the situation and do all that is necessary to stay safe. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Lagos. If you are waiting for a second phase of the gradual easing of the lockdown, either to open your business or travel for some other purposes or do something else, sorry, you might have to wait for another 2 weeks. That's our major conversation tonight. We look at the pros and the cons of that decision of the federal government. Before we get into it, let's tell you that the President, Muhammadu Buhari, today held a virtual meeting with representatives of the Governors Forum. At that meeting, the President sent a warning to everyone. In his own words, he said, quote, "We have to be very careful. We need to continue to educate and persuade the people to accept the reality of the situation and do all that is necessary to stay safe." End of quote. The governors at the meeting include those of Ekiti, Plateau, Sokoto, Ebonyi, Delta, Borno, and Jigawa State. The president is asking for good working relationship between the governors and the presidential task force on COVID-19. Others who were physically present at the council chamber at that meeting were the president are the governor of the central bank, Godwin Emefiele, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Ahmed, the SGF, as well as the Chief of Staff to the President. So now, let's go to our major story for tonight. It's perhaps something a lot of people were expecting because of the situation of things. There was a warning in the early days of the announcement of the gradual easing of the lockdown. So the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today extended the gradual ease of the lockdown by 2 weeks, the first phase that is, citing the need for other segments of the economy to adequately prepare for compliance with the guidelines. The chairman of the task force, who doubles as the secretary to the government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, made the announcement at a PTF daily briefing in Abuja. The task force also extends the lockdown in Kano State by another 2 weeks to enable health of workers in the state to effectively manage the pandemic. Take a listen to the SGF.
In spite of the modest progress made, Nigeria is not yet ready for full opening of the economy, and tough decisions have to be taken for the good of the greater majority. Any relaxation would only portend grave danger for our populace. Advisedly, the current phase of eased restriction will be maintained for another 2 weeks, during which stricter enforcement and persuasion measures will be pursued.
I'm now being joined on the program by the Chairman, House Committee on Health, Honorable Tanko Osunono. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us tonight. Let's begin by looking at what is on our hands as a nation. It's a big one for a lot of people who have been expecting this decision. Let me ask you, would you say the move by the federal government to extend the first phase of the gradual ease of the lockdown is the right decision?
Well, Chibangale, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me this evening to this important program where we are going to look at the gradual ease of lockdown in Nigeria. And also, let me also thank the Nigeria and Nigerians generally for being for showing understanding with federal government in compliance with directives given by the Mr. President. This, we believe, as a nation, we can come together and we can be united, irrespective of religious, political differences, so that we can achieve a common goal. And we have seen that that compliance has assisted significantly in helping the country to be where we are now. Now, the stand by the Presidential Task Force says gradual. And I think I support that word, gradual ease of lockdown, because we have found ourselves in a situation that is very difficult. And therefore, there are some certain lessons learned. And for you to effectively utilize those lessons, you need to ease it gradually. This easing gradually will allow us to have a room to further educate Nigerians on why they should be careful and why they should accept COVID-19 as a reality. It will also give us to develop habit of gradually accepting the need to comply with guidelines as far as released by both Federal Ministry of Health and Nigeria Center of Disease Control. So I think the gradual easing of the lockdown is very, very vital. And it also allowed the Presidential Task Force also to undergo what one can call monitoring and evaluation in terms of the overall behavior of Nigerians toward the final opening up of the economy, so that they can review where necessary, they can adjust the guideline to fit the prevailing circumstances. So I think I can say the gradual is in the right direction, and even the World Health Organization advised nations not to rush because of the fear of consequences that may follow the immediate relaxation.
Okay, so let's bring in a former deputy governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Obadiah Melafia, joins us now from Kuru. Thank you so much, Dr. Melafia, for joining us tonight. Let me put the same question I put to the lawmaker to you. Do you regard or say that the extension of the first phase of the ease of the lockdown, the right decision by the federal government?
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, let me say that I think it is the wise decision to do at this time. We can't be more cautious. We have to be careful. So far, God has been merciful. And, as the last count, we have only 5,959 cases and about 182 deaths. This could largely be because we have been able to put in place these lockdown mechanisms. And so we have to be cautious. But having said that, there are a lot of other things we needed to have put in place in terms of the support mechanisms to assist our people, to survive this very difficult time. Otherwise, I welcome it. I think we should be very cautious, and government is right to extend the relaxed lockdown for another 2 weeks. And also very good in the case of Kano that the strong lockdown has still been applied. The incident there is far more difficult, and containment has become absolutely necessary, not in order to protect not only Kano, but all its contiguous states and the country as a whole.
So I want us to look at, there is a major fact that the gradual easing window is supposed to take about 6 weeks. It's supposed to be in 3 phases. It means that we are in class 1. We are not yet promoted to class 2, which is a phase 2. Would you say we are making progress?
Well, we're making progress with great difficulty. If you recall, Melinda Gates prophesied that she saw dead bodies, scattered all over the streets of Africa. Mercifully, that prophecy has not turned out to be a reality. So obviously, we are doing something right compared to North America, where you have over 2 million cases, in Europe, where you have 1.8 million cases. So I think that we must be doing something right. And in this sort of things, where, to be honest with you, no professor of epidemiology can claim to be an expert on COVID-19. It's a new disease. It has no known cure. It has no vaccine. And so, it's a grope in the darkness for a lot of us. So better to be very cautious than to gamble away. But having said that, I think that we should have been in phase 2 by now, given the epidemiological spread in Nigeria. And instead of just a blanket lockdown, you have a slightly more relaxed lockdown with total closure of public spaces, but allowing for socially distanced economic activities to still take place. And I think this is the phase we should be in now. Because if we cannot provide enough palliatives, we have to allow some, leeway for limited economic activities to take place. Otherwise, the hardship is very difficult for a lot of our people.
So let me ask the lawmaker, chair of the Health Committee, Honorable Sununu, with what we have on our hands right now. So because the committee gave a report to the president and I said, look, the problem was that Nigerians were not complying well enough with the guidelines of the gradual ease of the lockdown, at least as far as the first phase is concerned. So the same question I asked Dr. Melafia. Do you think we are making progress, considering what the committee said to the National Assembly when they came to the National Assembly?
Well, I think, let me first of all say that I quite believe Nigerians comply within acceptable limit to the provision of the guidelines. However, you must know that while you are thinking of this, just as one of our elders is talking now, Dr. Melafia, you must know that we have to look at economic consequences of the lockdown itself. And then vis-a-vis the area we find ourselves. We find ourselves in a situation whereby ab initio, the economy is in problem, social services cannot be said to be effective, and there is increasing rising poverty in the country. So it means you don't expect to have 100% compliance. We are in a country whereby greater majority will have to go out and work to get what they will eat tomorrow. Now, if you didn't allow them to go out to work tomorrow, it means the family will be faced with scarcity in terms of what to eat, what even to drink, because in some areas, they have to go out and fetch water they are going to use. So in such a way, when you find yourself in that condition, there is no way you can expect 100% compliance, because there are other contingency needs that will challenge the lockdown as far as the need for people to comply. They must go to look for what they are but within limit. I can agree that Nigerians have demonstrated the ability to comply and respect the provision of the federal government. And secondly,
sorry, apologies, Honorable.
Honorable,
we need to go on our break. Unfortunately, the PTF are saying that Nigerians did not comply as much, and that's why they are extending it. But we look at the guidelines they gave. For those who have forgotten, we will remind you tonight what the federal government said you should do in the first phase, which they are saying that Nigerians are not complying with, and look at the way forward. The implications for us as Nigerians as we expect the second phase of what is the 6-week gradual ease of the lockdown. We'll take a break, and when we come back, more on this. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Some of the breaking news that came in earlier today is the extension by 2 weeks of the gradual ease of the lockdown and the phase 1. Some information that you need to know also is the fact that in this first phase, in the first phase had Nigeria starting farming activities again, construction works in 23 states to employ large sections of laborers, and all what have you has commenced. But we're expecting to move into the second phase to open up the economy more. But the PTF says, wait a moment, some Nigerians are not compliant. So tonight, we have my panel breaking it down for you to look at the implications and where we need to go from here. Dr. Obadiah Melafia is a former deputy governor of the Central Bank. And we also have Honorable Tanko Sununu, is a chairman of the Health Committee in the House of Representatives. Let's remind you quickly about what the guidelines are all about. Maybe you have forgotten. Perhaps that's the reason why some Nigerians are not following. Look at some of the guidelines and what it says. Mandatory use of non-medical face masks, stroke covering in public spaces. Mandatory hand-washing facilities, sanitizers in all public places. Prohibition of interstate travel except for essential travels and services. Gathering of not more than 20 people outside of a workplace prohibited. Controlled access to markets and locations of economic activities. Mandatory temperature checks at all public spaces. Social distancing of 2 meters at work and other public spaces. Restriction of religious gatherings remains in force. Those are some of the guidelines put in place. Let me get back to Dr. Obadiah Melafia, and let's look at the economic implication. Can Nigeria cope with an extended 2 weeks for a larger opening of or reopening or gradual easing out of the lockdown on some aspect of the economy that are under some lockdown right now?
Well, yes, I think so. I mean, you and I will agree that, in fact, this pandemic has turned out to be a worse economic catastrophe than even the disease itself. People who have died from coronavirus in Nigeria, about 82, with over 5,000 cases. I can assure you that people that have died from the lockdown alone, more than 1,000, I'm sure, very easily, and more. So the economic aspect is something that we really need to look at, especially now that the farming season is back. You know that farming is very much dependent on rain. We depend on rain-fed agriculture in this part of the world. And when the rains come, farmers must cultivate and plant at the optimum period. If that period passes, without their doing so, obviously they would already have very serious problems. So I think that some kind of arrangement must be made with the right protocols for farmers to go back to their farms and engage in some kind of various farming activities. Otherwise, to be honest with you, we face the prospect of famine towards the end of the year. And other economic activities looked at, construction activities that don't involve people bundling together too closely should be looked at. And we need to work on the economic aspect of the lockdown because that is actually the biggest challenge, far in excess of the pandemic itself.
Okay, so let me go to Honorable Sununu. We're looking at the implications of the extension. In the phase 2, we understand that road repairs in 92 locations across 24 states should be part of the phase 2, but we are not yet moving into it because there's an extension of the phase 1. Give us a sense of what you may think could be a possible implication of the extension.
One, we may likely develop a habit of observing the guidelines and the protocol because as we are now, We are not saying that after the ease of lockdown, we are going to be completely free from coronavirus. So we want to inculcate in ourselves that behavior of trying to observe social distances even after the ease of lockdown. It also allowed us to look at the implication of where we are now to our economy, and also it allowed us to go an in-depth analysis of what is really the impact of the pandemic itself towards our healthcare delivery, and what are the lessons learned. You know, sometimes I was here, I made it clear that this has taught us a lot of lessons. We are in a situation whereby those that have and those have not are still within the country, and you cannot go out to seek for health care. So what is the implication of this? It means post-COVID, or even within the COVID, as the COVID is going, we must make an in-depth analysis of the infrastructure of our healthcare services, both human capital and infrastructural development, so that we can do something that we can all feel secure when we are to remain in the country and seek for our healthcare delivery. Well, I quite agree with Dr. Melafia that there are some certain challenges, health-wise too. With total lockdown, what we have realized that it has negatively affected the access to healthcare delivery. So that I quite agree with him that some people might have died as a result of inadequate access to healthcare delivery. And if you observe, most of the deaths in some areas before the confirmation are those who are elderly, who also have some chronic diseases that initially, on a regular basis, they are having the opportunity to go for follow-up and get their condition sorted out and treated by their doctors. But with total lockdown, it becomes obvious that they cannot access health care delivery. And not only that, private practitioners too became so scared that if they manage a case of COVID-19 in their clinic is likely to be stigmatized, and therefore, post-COVID, they may have or experience, likely they may experience a low turnout of patients because of fear of acquiring infection if they go there. Therefore, most of them also shut down their services. And I'm telling you that the implication is also that we have to also look at, within the next 2 weeks, let us also see the impact of the transmission as far as the country is concerned. Currently, the healthcare who are the frontliners, especially those in the isolation centers, those in our hospital are facing serious challenges. They don't have personal protective equipment. Even face mask in some hospitals are difficult to come by. Sanitizers are not readily available. And we are now seeing a condition whereby the infection among health workers is always in the increase. As at last count, I know of almost over 160 health workers are infected, with many of them
Honorable Sununu.
You see now we are having a challenge whereby your foot soldiers are now being scared to expose themselves, and then the patient too are afraid of your healthcare providers so that they cannot get a hospital-acquired infection. So within these 2 weeks, I do believe that the PTF will look at it closely and then come up with modality on how to address the issue holistically, so that when the economy is opened up, we may not have greater challenges that will necessitate us going back to another secondary lockdown.
All right. Honorable Sununu, let's give Dr. Melafia the final opportunity of the final shot, because we are obviously out of time. I put up the display of the guidelines earlier, Dr. Melafia, but I'm quite worried. Why do you think it's difficult for compliance on these guidelines? Your final word on that.
We should not be surprised at all. People are desperate. People are extremely desperate. A young man calls me up. I don't know how he found my number, calls me up from Lagos the other day and just told me that he's got some poison ready to commit suicide this night. That I should just give him some hope. Otherwise, he has not eaten for days. He has no hope of anything. He's going to just end his life. I had to do all the psychology I could, including praying for him and all that stuff, and encouraging him and trying to do a little bit for him just to survive that night. So there are hundreds of thousands of young people,
All right.
the blind, the leprous. People are desperate. I mean, we have to do more in terms of the palliatives for those kinds of people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Obadiah Melafia, former Deputy Governor of the CBN, and the Honorable Tanko Sununu, the Chairman of the Health Committee at the House of Representatives. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight and sharing your thoughts with us. But that's our show for tonight, everyone. 2 weeks extension. We are in it already. First day is down, and we're looking forward to the rest of it. Let's keep safe, everyone. Bye for now.